Welcome back to Nuclear News. Let's dive right into what is going on with this space. We have price action on the week down 0.66%, but year to date up 1.2%. Then we have the URNJ Sprott Junior Miners ETF up 5.84%, the S&P 500 up 7.87%. So uranium miners clearly starting to enter deep value territory yet again. Uranium miners ETF down from 58, now hitting 48. So the only way to understand if these assets are deep value is to understand the supply demand fundamentals of uranium. So let's start with supply. We have Kazatomprom, the largest producer of natural uranium, coming out with their production volume evolution, right? Projecting their 2024 production. And so for uranium prices to come down, obviously, supply would have to flood the market. Well, this is the largest producer showing their 2024 numbers dipping, right? They were projecting more. They're going to produce less, way less than 2015. So the biggest uranium miner can't produce nearly as much as they have in the past this year. And this speaks to just across the board massive uranium supply deficits. And on top of that, 100% of the 2024 to 2026 annual production is fully committed for supplying the needs of the Russian civil nuclear energy industry under an offtake contract at market-related terms. And so the largest uranium producer, what scarce uranium they can get out of the ground, is already spoken for. So what are massive Western economies going to do? Well, let's look at where the U.S. gets its uranium from. How much does the U.S. depend on Russian uranium? 24% of the uranium supply in the U.S. comes from Russia. Russia supplied nearly a quarter of the enriched uranium used in U.S. commercial reactors. So with that in mind, knowing that a massive chunk of uranium comes from Russia, look at what the U.S. is doing to limit the available supply of uranium even further for itself. Nuclear fuel funding deal confronts global market uncertainties. U.S. relies on Russia for uranium imports. Fuel supply emerges as key concern for reactor projects. A congressional deal authorizing $2.7 billion for uranium enrichment was a long-sought win for the nuclear industry as it seeks to secure a fuel supply for the current fleet of plants and advanced reactors in the pipeline, industry experts said. So they're doing everything they can to radically accelerate getting some uranium out of the ground in the U.S., but there is no way that in the next year they are going to offset a reduction of 24% uranium supply coming from Russia. So long story short, uranium getting scarcer and scarcer and scarcer in the West. And so that speaks to supply, right? Just getting tighter and tighter. Above ground uranium getting squeezed across the board. And we've just been covering how it just gets scarcer and scarcer as Wall Street firms like Sprott Asset Management are scooping it up. Uranium mines cannot bring supply online fast enough. So if the largest uranium producer on the planet, Kazatomprom, can't increase their production, what does that bode for these tiny early stage explorers and junior producers, right? So supply massively constrained. Let's look at demand. This is Secretary of Energy Jennifer Granholm in the US. I am bullish on the future of nuclear energy. We're in a transformational moment where we can build advanced nuclear reactors at a pace and scale not seen since the 1970s. Let's leverage the President of the United States once in a generation investments and make 2024 a year of action for nuclear. So while supply is constrained, they are talking about massively accelerating demand. She said a 1970s style build out. Well, look at what a 1970s style build out looks like. Operable nuclear power capacity. Look at the massive increase. So obviously we haven't moved since 1989. Well, what happens if we have another 1970s style increase? That's what the US government and their billions of dollars are trying to build out. So massively accelerate nuclear demand while supply is getting scarcer and scarcer. Nuclear SMR pipeline by countries. So we see the US with announced in purple, pre-development, under construction, canceled, and then early development, and then like in orange, a tiny amount actually being developed, but you can just see the wall of demand for nuclear coming from these brand new build outs, right? That is the writing on the wall, massive increase in demand. And these headlines speak to this accelerating demand. Washington state lawmakers allocate $25 million to advance SMR development. So we have money pouring in. U.S. nuclear regulator pledges to speed reviews of aging reactors. NRC close to final rule on environmental reviews. Commission facing wave of license renewals, new reactors. So not only is there a wave of these license renewals, but they're trying to increase and speed up the review of them all, accelerating demand further. Japan ramping up drive to restart world's biggest nuclear plant. Canada will fast track approval of nuclear projects, Natural Resource Minister Wilkinson says. And so with regards to whether or not the assets that produce and control this scarce uranium supply, are they deep value? Well, if the supply of what they're producing is shrinking and getting scarcer and the demand is accelerating dramatically, obviously the assets on their balance sheet are getting worth more and more and more every single day. And if we look out to the future, we have in Brussels next week, world leaders gathering for a massive nuclear summit. Following on from their pledge at COP28 to triple nuclear capacity by 2050, world leaders are meeting to discuss how to make this a reality. Talking about ways of accelerating the nuclear renaissance even further. Does not get bigger than this.